Diablo 4's open beta has closed its curtains, and after offering us a glimpse of the bloody carnage that awaits us in June, it's been a hell of a time. But was it the rock and roll all the way to hell kind? Or was it more of a "Here lie all ye sinners in eternal agony, scream as we rend the flesh from thine bones" type of hell? And is this hell a new, fresh, unexpected torment, or more of the same old fire and brimstone? What ultimately did we learn from the Diablo 4 beta? For starters, the beta offered a surprisingly meaty slice of the game, allowing players free roam through the starting zones and areas to explore the overworld, a bevy of dungeons, major and minor, several towns and settlements, as well as a tantalizing glimpse at the early quest lines. We played the standard class lineup of Barbarian, Necromancer, Sorcerer, Rogue, and Druid. No major surprises here, although character creation was much more robust and visually striking than in previous entries, which is nice if you're into that. The beta returns players to Diablo's world of Sanctuary to battle with demonic forces, the undead, creepy crawlies of all kinds, and fanatical cultists, as we chase down Lilith, who is basically Fem Diablo, probably because the devs keyed into the high percentage of gamers who have a dommy-mommy fetish or are actual femboys themselves and had to make a pivot. That's as far as I'll talk about the story here, partly to avoid spoilers, but mostly because I spent the majority of my time side questing and demon slaying my balls off. One of the biggest takeaways I had of the beta was that it does what the Diablo series is most well known and loved for very, very competently. Art style, gameplay, audio design and music, voice work, writing, all of it was on point in general. Bleeding edge graphics and absolute visual fidelity have never really been the point of the Diablo games given its top-down perspective, but it is worth noting that there were more cinematic looks and close-in shots of our characters, the world around us, at key story moments even as early in the game as we were offered. I didn't play through every zone or challenge every enemy type the beta had to offer, but I did tackle a lot, and the variety on display is impressive. I took on everything from ghouls, wargs, bears, cultists, massive spiders, bloodthirsty ents, vampires, werewolves, hulking abominations, and damn near everything in between, all in the very first region of the game. Most mobs use high volume numbers to swarm and overwhelm players, but there are some enemies that employ some interesting approaches to battle, such as a skeletal lord type boss that throws up walls to cut off the player and keep them at bay while sending out orbs that inflict slow and darkness when players stand in the zone of effect. The player then has a limited time to destroy the bone walls springing up around them before the boss triggers the walls to explode, inflicting massive damage. Loot was plentiful and as addictive to collect, upgrade, and enchant as it always has been in Diablo games, providing a consistent little dopamine drip of new shiny shit to equip and lay out some havoc. There's a transmog system to skin weapons as you like, and getting the benefits of both stats and fashion was a welcome addition that really should be standard for most games at this point. Build variety in the Diablo 4 beta was strong, showing off huge branching skill trees with a wide variety of skills, augments, buffs, movesets, and specializations to draw from for each class. As nice as all the trappings, trimmings, and extensive progression systems of the beta and indeed Diablo 4 itself are, none of that is what we're here for. The main attraction of Diablo is and always will be the carnage, the bloody battles, hundreds and thousands of demons hurling their collective might against the force of intrepid adventurers who dare to say, "Go back to the hell you came from," which is a lot less of an intimidating thing to say to an actual hellspawn demon if you think about it. I mean, you're basically just saying, hey, go home. You're drunk. An interesting addition to the familiar Diablo formula are events, which can be found throughout the overworld. These events are primarily challenges the player must complete upon activation and can range from surviving against waves of oncoming enemies, destroying altars, defending NPC targets under attack by hordes of demons, killing enemies in specific areas to accumulate a required number of sacrifices, and many more. These events reward players with bonus experience as well as chests stuffed full of treasure and rare gear, and made up some of the most fun content to engage with during the beta. Let's talk about the two different types of multiplayer that you can experience and how that might translate into the future of the full release game. First and most importantly to me, drop-in couch co-op was present in the beta, which meant that a big chunk of my playtime I spent playing with my wife Jess. After making our characters separately, she could drop into my game at any time and vice versa, and we could go adventuring through Sanctuary together. The chaos during those sessions, both on and off the screen, really made the whole beta experience for me. The game gave us both our own designated loot and money so we could focus squarely on the slaying and playing. Other small details like being able to move along through the game, dragging your teammate if they are AFK or not paying attention, or while they're in menus sorting loot or skills, let you keep the game moving and not twiddling your thumbs constantly. Though I could also see this feature being used for great evil in the future, and I'm either thrilled or salty depending on if I'm the one doing the evil or not. I've played enough games that force one bored, inactive player to stick their thumb up their ass while the other sorts through loot or goes AFK, that in my book this was a pretty big win. I'm sore back there, and I can only wash my hands so much. From what the beta provided, couch co-op was a win, and as long as Blizz doesn't do anything screwy between now and the full release, it should remain spot on. The online multiplayer is a much more mixed bag. Diablo 4, at least in the beta, was always online, meaning you not only had to navigate the headache of the game being unplayable unless your internet is active and stable, but you were also forced to be in the game with other players in a not really but close enough MMO style setup. To be fair, in my experience, the addition of other players was fairly unobtrusive. My wife and I would adventure around, fight a bunch of mobs, and occasionally see other players here or there. A few times we ended up fighting a huge swath of demons alongside one or two other players, made short work of the legion of the baddies, and then went our separate ways. We saw a few players idling or roaming in town, and that was pretty much the extent of our interactions. All that said, while our experiences with online players wasn't negative, I could see it being different for some players. If you're looking for an immersive experience, wandering through the isolated snowy passes of the overworld, only to cross paths with some random named Scrody McBooger balls might be a bit of a vibe killer. Beyond that, depending on just how clogged and congested servers become with active players, it wouldn't surprise me to see a shit ton of people hanging all about in the bigger towns, turning the experience into something of a headache. Depending on how Blizzard handles messaging and communication between players in the final game, that has a pretty big chance to become a shit show as well. I'm hopeful that the finished Diablo 4 has the option of either playing offline entirely, or at the very least making a private lobby so you and a few invited buddies can play together in peace and glorious introverted solitude. So overall, where does the beta and by proxy likely the full Diablo 4 experience land for me? Honestly, little column A, little column B. On one hand, and pretty essentially for me, I had a blast. One of the most crucial elements for me on if I enjoy a game or not is if it's just straight out fun or not, and Diablo 4 checked that box. It's mindless, grindy, frenetic fun, a deluge of mob bashing, horde slaying violence that you can easily get lost in. From what the beta offered, it's fun. A lot of fun, in fact. Especially if you get to enjoy grinding through those demonic legions with your smoking hot and slightly bloodthirsty wife. Or, you know, your regular homies if you're maidenless or whatever. If you don't like grind, don't get Diablo. It's just gonna piss you off and you're gonna write an angry Steam review about how it's a horrible game, 0 out of 10, unplayable, and blah blah blah. Grow up! My other reservations center around Blizzard as a company. On top of the absolute shit show of their horrendous workplace environment and upper management fuck-ups, I still haven't forgotten about the travesty of Diablo Immortals and how badly whoever greenlit that whole fiasco needs to have their balls juggled with a pair of hot tongs. I doubt that Diablo 4's monetization system will be egregious to the extent that Immortals is. Nonetheless, I still have no doubt there will be some form of monetizing in this game. And to what degree they push those systems and how deeply that is ingrained into the core experience will go a long way toward determining if I'm willing to give the final game release my time or money. We won't find out how this shakes out until the full release, and I'm really hopeful, given how otherwise well done the game has been so far, that this doesn't end up being the case. But to say that I'm wary of how they handle all this would be the understatement of a lifetime. At the beginning of this video, we asked, is Diablo 4 something fresh and new? Based on the beta? Nah, not really. Don't get me wrong, we aren't even looking at a complete game, so there could very well be some major twists and turns we don't know about yet. But do I think there will be anything that is going to move the genre forward or completely define it anew? Probably not. But I didn't really expect that there would be going into the beta in the first place. There's only so much that can be done to reinvent the top-down isometric beat-em-up, loot-em-up dungeon crawler. I think the real takeaway is, will Diablo 4 be good enough to justify a purchase instead of, say, popping Diablo 3 back in and sticking to that? And I'd say so far, yeah. Maybe it's because I'm having so much fun co-oping with my wife. Maybe this fresh coat of paint is hitting all the right notes for me. Maybe I haven't played one of these games in so long that I'm overdue for the cathartic, visceral satisfaction that comes with this specific genre of kill everything that moves simulator. Whatever the case, I really enjoyed the Diablo 4 beta. And I breathed a bit of a wistful sigh when the beta was over and I had to look forward to the long wait until June for the full release. I enjoyed it enough that I am willing to cautiously withhold my negative judgment of all things Blizzard. I'm willing to wait and see if the game is not only a smash hit, but more importantly, the redemption that the series and the studio so desperately need. The ball's in your court, Blizzard. Don't fuck it up.